So this is a review of the Moons Design Lunar Duo Ultralight shelter. We picked this up before our trip to Isle Royale. We picked it up because we needed a shelter for when we couldn't get a shelter along the coast. So along the coast, they have little screened-in shelters, and on the inland stuff, you don't get that option. And also, if you don't, it's first come first serve. So if you don't get one, you're kind of out of luck. So we needed a shelter for the times we didn't get one of the solid shelters when we were there, and that tends to be on the inland part of the island. Anytime you're not on the coast, they don't have those shelters. So we did need something, and the reason we got it is because when we did this before, we just did a tarp tent. Camped under a tarp. We had a hammock one time before we were really into hammocking, and we didn't have bug nets, or I didn't have a bug net at least. And you just end up with mosquitoes buzzing around your head all night, which kind of isn't very fun. So we got this just to have kind of a bug shelter, more or less, a waterproof bug shelter for the evenings. It's very lightweight, and this one had a lot of good reviews as far as the internal size. Me being 6'5" and my girlfriend being 5'10", we tend to push the limits of the dual portion of this, but it did work well. I was able to lay out fully and have a little bit extra room, and both of us were able to lay flat and still have a little room on each side. So it worked as the dual person tent. Ideally, this is a great single tent for me. The size is perfect, gives me a lot of room inside. You can sit up straight. I believe the dimensions are about 90 inches long on the inside and 116 with the little attached tarp or attached rain fly, and I believe it's 54 inches wide and something like 64 inches wide with the vestibule on each side. As it's shipped, it's 41 ounces, I believe, 43 with seam seal. I think the seam seal adds like 2 ounces or something like that to it. It also comes with these support stakes, or these support poles that go in the sides to give your roof structure and kind of spread it out a little bit, so you do get that extra room in it. And I just stored these on the side of my pack, and then the shelter itself compresses very small, leaves you with really nothing. You're able to kind of stuff this where it needs to go. It does not come with the stakes, 6 stakes, and we just purchased the 6-inch groundhog MSRs, the MSR groundhogs. We were going with 4-inch MSR groundhogs, but they worked, but I wasn't very comfortable with that. I wouldn't be comfortable in high winds or a really big downpour or anything like that. I would be a little worried that they would come undone, because you do have to have tension on the lines to keep the tent rigid and get the best waterproofing and just using it as a shelter, make the internal room. This is Marlo in the background sniffing around. So we just recently got these. It's going to give a little bit more grip, be able to go a little deeper in the ground. So I'll come to that. So what I'm going to do is just set this up and kind of just show you the dimensions, get inside of it, and kind of show you what kind of room it is. So I've staked out the 4 corners, and I've inserted one of the poles that's going to give your ceiling the structure that it needs. So inside, there's little ventilation pockets here under these, and inside the tent there is a channel sewn in to put those poles in, and then just pull this cap over in place, and that gives that roof, that ceiling, that gives it the shelter and kind of spreads the fabric out and gives you all that ceiling room, which is nice. I believe it's 54 inches in ceiling room here. And this grommet here is what you are going to stick the other part of the rigidity of the tent is your hiking pole. And you stand it up in that grommet and flip this all over the top. Like so. Now your hiking poles will have to be set at that 115 centimeter mark at both areas there. And you can adjust that if you need a little bit more or a little bit less. And that's the tension with the other one. So again, you're just pulling here to tighten this and then zipping up your door to create your vestibule. Now these down here, you have this sliding, I guess prusik knot kind of, that kind of attaches here and holds your vestibule in place. And then as you slide this down, that kind of creates your space. Now over here on the corners, you're going to tighten as needed. And I'm actually going to bring this out a little further. And you're going to do that for all four corners. And this right here is it, fully guyed out at least on the four corners and your two trekking poles. There are two additional tie-out points that do give you a little bit more room on the inside. So these you're going to pull out. It kind of pulls out on the edge of the tent, and I might secure mine here to this tree. And here's the other one. Again, pulling this out, putting it into the ground. I don't have an extra stake with me, so I'm going to leave this as is, unless I can find something to tie it out to. But that does give you a little bit more headroom, a little bit more foot room inside the tent. Now this is with one of the sides opened up. I've unzipped the vestibule and rolled the two doors up and fastened them with the toggles that are on either side. Now on days where you know you're not, or evenings where you know you're not going to be rained on or it looks pretty good, and you want to just kind of go with maximum ventilation, I would do this on one or both sides depending on, I guess, the wind. And that really helps kind of cut down on condensation. You can see the amount of space underneath the vestibule on the other side. It does offer a pretty good breeze underneath. We did have a little splash up issue going on, but if you pitch that guy line a little bit narrower, you can bring that side vestibule down. This setup allows for a little bit more ventilation underneath. So you can see the bathtub floor in action right on the corner there, and you can see how much airflow there is underneath. That also can be battened down a little bit more. If you put on this side, as it's a little more battened down, a little closer to the ground, if you put sticks underneath here, make these rise up a little more, that lifts your floor, and that gives a little more ventilation under the rain fly. Now that does increase on your condensation in the evening when it's been way down. We did have a little bit of condensation issues, but it wasn't too bad. That was my only kind of, I guess, concern about a single wall tent, was the condensation on the inside. And you are able to, depending on your pitch, kind of minimize some of that. So let's look at the inside. All right, so here I am inside the tent, and I'm sitting straight up. You can kind of see I've put down a mat. This does tend to the floor tends to be a little slippery with your air mattresses. These Gossamer Gear closed cell foams work pretty well. I usually bring one of these with me or something. Just I cut off a piece and put that down, and that kind of holds your air mattress in place. This isn't enough for me to sleep on, but it weighs next to nothing. I bought one and cut it down to size. It's just kind of a little sit pad, and if I put my mattress on top of it, it stays in place. And I'm sitting up straight. I've got plenty of headroom. There's Marlo for you. He wants to be on the inside here. And if I lay down, all right, so I'm fully laid out here. You can see I've got a little bit of headroom here. If you look down at the other end, I've got my feet there. If I lay at an angle, it gives me a little bit more room even. This is probably how I would lay if I was by myself. So I've got plenty of room here, a lot of room to kind of spread out. These mosquito netting on the side. You don't have to worry about like leaning something up, and getting bit through the screen. You have plenty of room to kind of spread out if you sleep. I like to spread out when I sleep a little bit. Sitting straight up again, plenty of room here. This is the tie out point right here, so that you can see where that kind of pulls back on the wall a little bit, giving you a little bit more room here. This is where I don't have it. This would pull that back a little bit more and also lift up your bathtub again a little bit more, the bathtub floor. That's what you're trying to, if it was a little wetter, I would definitely make sure that was tied out to make sure that this doesn't lay flat on the ground and lifts up a little. It's got two doors here. Both have these double zippers here. So my girlfriend and I were able to both lay flat in this, shoulder to shoulder, and have plenty of room. We did definitely test the limits of the tent as far as its dual purpose, or dual occupancy. We are about the limit. Me at 6'5", her at 5'10". I wouldn't recommend any more than that. We both like our space and like to spread out a little bit. So, in a pinch though, as a shelter, a lightweight shelter, works great. Plenty of room, very lightweight. We went with the Sil Nylon version instead of the Cuban. The Cuban would be about half the weight. I think it's about 28, 23 ounces, something in that range. But it does double the price. This was about in the 300 to 310 range, and it was a last minute purchase. We didn't want to spend the full. It was like $600, I think, for the Cuban. Maybe in the future. Maybe bike packing or something like that, I might break down and buy at least a single version of a Cuban just to carry along with me on my bike, or we may continue to use this. I don't know, but great shelter, plenty of room. The vestibule provides a lot of room. You can kind of look at the vestibule here, and we had our pack and our shoes under there. They stayed dry for the most part. You can again bring the bottom edge down a little bit by bringing the guy line in a bit and tightening on the top here by pulling down here. That'll tighten that, and you can bring that down, and that prevents some of the splashback. But we had dry bags, we had everything that needed to stay dry was able to stay dry, and it worked great. We never got wet outside of just kind of that little bit of splashback in the middle of the night, but easily preventable with a different pitch. So that's the Moons Design Lunar Duo Ultralight Shelter. As far as I'm concerned, it's compactable, it's lightweight, and it's roomy. So those are going to be my three big concerns. Those are my biggest points that I'm looking for when I'm purchasing a shelter. I want to be comfortable, I want to be dry, I want to have a lot of room to kind of move around, and from my opinion, This would make an excellent one-person shelter for anybody, say like 6'2", 6'3", and above. And in a pinch, you can use it as a two-person shelter with reasonable comfort considering. All in all, just an excellent shelter, and it performs really, really well. I'd highly recommend it.